Good. We'll go ahead and start the regular and call to order the Historic Architecture Review Commission meeting, February 15th, 5:30. It's a hybrid meeting at Rebecca Hall, 113 West Columbia. If you're joining by phone, you can dial in at 301-715-852. Meeting ID is 892-8179-5500. Passcode is 164444. Present from staff, Piper, Jonna, Erica, Alex, Ron. I guess that's quorum from staff. From council, I don't see anybody yet. And from our hardworking board,
Kieran Land,
Stacy Lake,
Matt Lees.
Mark Shambo.
Christine Farfar.
Andrew Williamson.
Very good. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes from the HARC regular meeting of January 18th?
I move to approve the HARC meeting minutes dated 1/18/2023.
Matt second. Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
And I will move to approve the chairperson meeting minutes of January 20th, 2023 as written. Just a footnote, we had, I think, maybe it was 5 projects that would have normally gone to the board in the name of debottlenecking. We still handled them in less than an hour. And I thought of everybody here one time with a temptation to elevate it. But we worked it and I was happy, and I think Jonna was, with the results. But I just wanted you to know that I won't ever forget that, since we've got not much else to do here. So that's 7 in 2 months, because Kieran's going to take 3 of them this Friday, since the 2 of us are gone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Part of the deal. Okay. Jonna?
I have several announcements, but I think I'll wait till the end. And we'll have some board and staff discussion at the very end. But I do have the slide available about public participation.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put it up there. And I'm just gonna make one comment. I said in January, or maybe it was December, but I'd bring a quote of the month from some tourist. And so the first one was, gosh, don't let them do anything to this town. It looks like a Hallmark scene inside of a snow globe. The second one was a guy that was really concerned. He's been coming 25 years. He was early 30s, I guess. And of course, these were on chair 9, where you used to, the old chair 9, where you used to get a lot more time for feedback. The new chair 9, it's just like, okay, whatever. But anyway, he said that they're going to get married in 2 years, in 26, I guess, or no, 25. And he said, my wife has this real thing about taking our photo on Main Street. And he said, there's nothing coming up that's going to destroy the view corridor, is it? And I said, well, that's what our board's about. But I said, I don't think so. So he could relax. So, I mean, that was his concern, right? The view corridor. Okay. I got a better quote next month, but I'm going to say, okay. Instructions for public comment. Really, it's just raise your hand if you would like to provide public comment, and then raise your hand electronically, click meeting participants, and then if you're calling by phone, just dial *9 to raise your hand. And the rules of the road are that the HARC chair, will introduce the project. Staff will give the presentation and answer HARC's questions. The applicant will give a presentation, which we ask to be 30 minutes or less, and answer HARC questions. The public will then be invited to make comments on the specific project. We ask for 3 minutes or less, please. Dialogue between the public and the applicant and or the board is not allowed. The applicant may then address and give a rebuttal to the public comment, and that's the end of the public comment. And the applicant may, I said rebut, but then the HARC members will take up deliberation on the project. So those are the rules of the road. And I think we're ready for the first item, which is a work session with Ron Corals, and we'll let you share your screen, Ron. Let us know Brent,
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Chair Shambaugh.
I should read into the record that
Yeah.
it is, the title is the Land Use Code Amendment. I think we've all read it, but it's discussion of the options to amend the Land Use Code Article 6, Division 8, temporary uses and structures to address temporary structures for additional dining on private property. And staff member is Ron Coral. So now share your screen.
Okay, let me share. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I got a PowerPoint presentation here. This is a work session. We're trying to make some changes to our temporary uses and structures section, which is in the land use code. Currently, the temporary uses and structures are something that the town council can approve. It's defined as land uses and structures which are needed and intended to serve legitimate public or private purposes on a temporary and non-permanent basis that may or may not be permitted in a given zoning district. It's permitted and reviewed by the town council for approval. It's one of the few items that doesn't go to HARC or the Planning and Zoning Commission. The criteria for approval of temporary uses and structures, the uses and structures should have a location, size, design, operating characteristics, and visual impacts that are minimal. Compatible with character, density, and use of structures and uses in the immediate vicinity. The impacts on the pedestrian and vehicular traffic and traffic patterns, municipal services, noise levels, and neighborhood character are minimal. They look at duration of the use and the purpose and intent of the underlying zoning district, even though it may not be a use that's permitted by that zoning district. It should still be, should still consider the intent of the underlying zoning district. Relation to conditions and character in the neighborhood or in the area, and the impact it actually enhances or it does not diminish the general public health, safety, or welfare. Sorry, I'm having to move this. Okay. Criteria. Again, HARC does not review and has no jurisdiction on the approval of temporary uses and structures. However, the town council may refer a development application for a temporary use or structure to HARC for its comments and recommendations. My memory and based on research, I haven't found any examples of a temporary use and structure that was actually referred to HARC. Duration of these temporary uses may be granted for 180 days or a shorter period. And then one extension may be granted. No extensions shall exceed 180 days. So basically, the longest period for a temporary use of structure would be approximately 1 year. There is an exception for public facility uses. This is something that was drafted into the Land Use Code in 2017. These uses can be approved for a period up to 3 years, and an extension can be granted for any time period to further the civic or public service function. The only uses that I'm aware of that have been granted under this provision are the shipping container that's located at the medical center and the old depot building that was used for a clinic for the medical center. It's no longer used. That use has expired. The shipping container was actually approved for 10 years, so it's there until 2031 or until the medical center relocates to its permanent location. If you remember back when the COVID pandemic started, there were some very strict requirements for indoor capacity limits. And this photograph kind of reminds us of how restrictive it was. This was taken back in March of 2020, about the time that the pandemic was really taking hold. In order to address the pandemic, Town Council adopted some emergency measures for the last 2 years to allow uses that would not ordinarily be allowed within the zoning. If you remember, there were some uses on the public rights of way and on private property. Some of the uses on the public rights of way have evolved into what we're calling parklets now. They're becoming something that the town is allowing every year, every summer. Other uses that were allowed on private property, there were several uses, but just kind of going back in the history of the what the town council did approve during the pandemic. Beginning in June of 2020, temporary structures were allowed on private property until the end of October. Then in October of 2020, they extended that until May by a resolution, again, emergency resolution. March 2021, that was again extended to October 30 of 2021. And then in October, the resolution was approved to extend it again into May of 2021. Finally, in March of 2022, Town Council directed staff to utilize the customary and standard provisions of the land use code to deal with some of these uses. There were no more emergency resolutions to allow temporary structures or uses. Some of those uses were approved as temporary uses subject to the land use code for a period of 180 days. And then in November, those uses were extended for another 180 days and expire in May of 2023 or May of this year. When the town council approved its final extension for these uses, it also instructed staff to work on a possible land use code amendment to deal with temporary structures and uses for more or for extended periods and less frequent hearings with the town council. The temporary uses and structures that were granted permits that originated during the pandemic included the 221 South Bistro, yurt, and greenhouse in the back of or in the rear of the property. Telluride Arts established a Quonset hut that they used for the events at the transfer warehouse. La Marmotte and Smuggler Union provided for some temporary structures for winter dining, and also La Cocina de Luz. I've got photographs of each of these. Quonset hut was approved for Telluride Arts originally under the pandemic or the provisions of the pandemic, and then approved as temporary uses by our land use code. And we anticipate the removal of this structure, Quonset hut structure or for the 2023 summer season for the rehabilitation of the transfer warehouse. So when it expires, we anticipate that it will be removed. The yurt at the rear of the 221 South Oak Bistro. We also anticipate that that will be removed when it does expire in May of 2023. They are moving forward with constructing or planning for the construction of a permanent structure. So we'll no longer utilize the yurt or the greenhouse. Shelter structure that you're probably very familiar with at La Cocina de Luz. That was constructed at the early period of the pandemic and has remained with the temporary use approvals that were granted just last year. Again, we anticipate this being removed for the 2023 summer season. The owner has indicated that they will follow, or they will plan to do some outdoor dining that's typical for that space rather than utilize that structure that was constructed 2 or 3 years ago. 4 globes were installed at La Marmotte restaurant. And that again started during the pandemic, when 150 West San Juan. And then 2 greenhouse structures were placed on the property at Smuggler Union Brewery. This space is utilized as outdoor dining during the summertime, but these structures were put in place for winter dining as temporary uses. We anticipate that the globes and the greenhouses will return for the winter use in 2024, although we haven't, we're not aware of what the owner intends to do, but we anticipate that these will continue. Staff has tried to address the issue of these expanded or additional outdoor, or not outdoor, but dining opportunities during the winter through the temporary use approval process. We want to address some changes that address these unique uses, because they're not something that go up and then are there for 180 days and are removed and then are never placed on the property again. They're something that are more seasonal in nature. In other words, every winter we anticipate that the owners will propose these structures for expanded dining opportunities. So we've got language that we're proposing, or we have 3 options that we included in the staff memo. And so I'll just go ahead and read those options. And again, these address the temporary structures for the additional dining for seasonal use. So the first option reads, town council may approve temporary structures for supplemental dining for a maximum of 180 days per calendar year for 3 consecutive years, with the possibility of an extension for 3 additional consecutive years with 180-day maximums per calendar year. After 6 years, a request for the temporary structures must be requested with town council again. So what this option does, it gives the seasonal uses approval for 3 consecutive years with the possibility of an extension of another 3 years, or another 3 years, for a total of 6 years. It would only have to go in front of town council 2 times within that 6-year period, which I think is the intent or the goal of town council. The second option, town council may approve temporary structures for supplemental dining for a maximum of 180 days per calendar year. Staff may grant administrative approvals for up to 180 days for 3 subsequent consecutive calendar years. After 4 years, a request for temporary structures must be requested with town council again. So this option, again, it gives 180 days for 3 consecutive years, but the extension would then be granted administratively by staff. And then finally, which this option probably is the least complex, probably the most simple. Town council may approve temporary structures for supplemental dining for a maximum of 180 days per calendar year for 3 consecutive years. No extensions may be granted, but nothing would restrict a new application with town council after 3 years. So this limits the number of hearings with town council, but it does give an extended period of 3 years with 180 days per calendar year. These are just options that we wanted to present to HARC. We're going to take these to Planning and Zoning Commission as well. And we're just seeking your input. If you think these are manageable or functional, then or if you would recommend any other kind of language that would deal with temporary uses, we're open to hear your suggestions. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and listen to your guidance.
Ron, 2 questions to start off with. Does this run with the land? If the operator of the restaurant changes ownership, does it run with the land, so to speak?
That's probably something that would be in the condition of approval. That if it is, if during that 180 days, it is transferred to another property owner, I think it would need to be in the condition that it would be transferable to that new property owner.
Okay, and my last question is, on the 100 days of usage, especially since we only have 2 left, and we know that they're going to use them more than 180 days, or at least they have. I mean, is somebody going to police that? Or are we sticking with 180? Because
Well, I mean, when they first went up, the globes in particular, they were used during most or both the summer and winter season. The second year, however, the summer season, I don't think they were actually used. They were stored on the property, but they weren't utilized for dining during the summer months because they're a little bit, they're not as seasonal. They're a little bit hotter in the summer months, so it's hard to use those kind of structures. What we would prefer is that if they're winter structures, they be removed, similar to the smuggler. They remove those structures every summer and do the outdoor dining.
okay. So part of this that they would remove them, or at least store them.
Yeah, that's the
somewhere.
intent.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a quick question. Is there monitoring, like let's say one of them decided that it wasn't adequate and they wanted to put a bigger structure or another structure, another dome thing, whatever it's called, on there. Is there a review to make sure that it's the same thing put back every year?
Yeah, it'd have to be, and this would be something that would need to implement or as an administrative process, that we ensure that the use that was approved is the same use that's extended the next year. If it's not, then it would have to go back to town council for reconsideration.
If they brought in a different structure than what they've been using.
Exactly.
Other questions?
Well, I just want to be clear on what problem we're trying to solve. It seems to me now that there's the potential for 6 visits to council in a 3-year span. So that'd be 12 in a 6-year span. If you have to go every 180 days to get an extension. It seems like this is being driven by council wanting to have fewer
Your meeting.
meetings.
Yeah.
So if that it truly is the goal that we're trying to solve, then the first and second options, I think, do that pretty adequately.
Could you put those up again?
Sure.
Granting an approval for 3 years and then
Yeah,
let's
3
go
years.
back in one more time
And the
and
3
get an
years, number
extension.
one was,
Yeah. I think that looking at this holistically, which is what I did when I read through the packet, it seems like in 4 or 5 cases, the temporary use worked exactly as intended. There was a public health emergency, more outdoor dining space was needed, that was provided, and then those are going away. It seems like we have 2 instances where somebody wants to keep that going. Which I think is fine. But to me, this fixes or solves or addresses council's issue. Unless I'm missing something.
well, Ron, are you coming to HARC as we look at context of the neighborhood and some of our guidelines? Because this word temporary is kind of confusing me on, the length of granting the extensions. They were temporary and now they're not. And now they could be permanently temporary. And do we well, really, that's what it is. And so do we think, should we, I guess the only thing we can comment on, P&Z and everybody can look at other factors are the guidelines, right? I don't find.
Well, we're bringing this to you since you do provide a review and recommendation on land use code amendments and we'd like to hear your unique perspective as HARC members. These are structures that, like you say, are becoming more permanent. They're seasonal, but they're more permanent than temporary structures in the past.
And I wasn't on HARC at the time, but did the globes and the greenhouses come? Yeah, so
No,
No,
No review.
yeah, it's like, what are we?
I don't know. If we're just to provide administrative pick of the 3 options, that's one thing. But I'm just trying to think, should we put our blinders on the guidelines here?
I don't think there's any guidelines that speak.
To temporary, I know that's the dilemma, but still,
But it's still temporary. It's only winter, right?
I know, I've set
Both
those
of
in the
these-
summer.
Huh?
Setting those globes.
Yeah,
in
but
the
they're
summer.
not, that, he just said that
They're
they
not.
move them out of the way. We have our open seating at both,
The table.
at Smugglers and Larmont, right? And these are only for the winter. So that's temporary.
They're in the fall at Lormont.
Well, again, that's 180 days,
Yeah.
right? So
yeah. When it expires, they should remove those structures. So in May of this year, those globes will expire as well as the
Yeah, I'm trying not to make this into more than it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Town council's asked for a way for them to only have to review this twice every 6 years or twice every 3 years or whatever it is. Okay,
Have staff approve it for number 2, staff is.
Yeah. and that keeps a shorter leash, because then after 4 years, they do have to go to council, and the council gets 4 years of not having to deal with it. That seems.
I think I actually prefer the third option. It seems shorter, easier. And there is there's a requirement that the applicant kind of check in every 3 years. So these temporary structures, they could get in disrepair, or
Yeah.
something could change. I think that I like the 3-year
Yeah.
sort of timeline.
Okay.
Personally, it's town council decision. right?
I think I agree with.
So is this a formal R&R to P and Z or just?
session.
No, it's just a work session, but we'll be coming back to you one of the next meetings with a with a review and recommendation to Planning and Zoning Commission for
We have
North.
time to work that in to the agenda.
We'll fit it in.
I just. Well, I could side with number 3. I don't know. 3 years and then they have to fly again.
I like 3. I'm not supposed to say that. 3 seems to work best.
For 3.
Chris says-
There we go.
Okay,
That's
unanimous.
Okay.
Wow, that was.
Three, option 3 is actually a little more consistent with the 3-year approval that's granted for the public service uses or the public facility uses. So
And when we see the R&R, it'll be, things like, does it run with the land or the business owner license and things. Is this a license? I guess it is.
It's a permit.
It's just a permit, okay. But I'd suggest those things be included, so. I don't know.
yeah, when it
Okay.
comes to you as an ordinance, it'll be pretty similar to what you're looking at right now. That's the only language that, or will be
Okay.
language to the land use code, but it won't be much more than what you're looking at right now.
All right, Ron, well, thank you for teeing it up there.
Well, thank you for your assistance on that. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay. Our single public hearing item this evening is the Brown residence, consideration of a final large-scale application for new construction in the Hillside Developing 2 Zone District, which is located outside the THLD, but within the HPOD and will contain more than 2,500 square foot per Land Use Code 7203B1A1, formerly Land Use Code 7203A.RJ. Description is lot 2, North and East Tire Investment Company LLP subdivision PUD and replat located on lots 3 through 12, block C, lots 1 through 12, block D, and lots 1. Address is 448 Tomboy and the zone district Hillside Developing 2. Kia Property is the owner and applicant, Danny Houlihan of Fountainhead Studio, staff member John Woodson.
Thank you, Chairperson Shamba. So HARC last reviewed this application on November 16th. If you recall, we did a site walk. And then HARC reviewed the preliminary large-scale application. Just as a reminder, since that was a few months ago, the site is located on the south side of Tomboy Road, where it would intersect with North Willow Street. The site slopes up to the northeast with about 60 feet of grade change from the north to the south. The property is located outside the Telluride Historic Landmark District and inside the Historic Preservation Overlay District. It's in the Developing Hillside Treatment Area and the Hillside Developing 2 Zone District, with also a PUD that varies some of the dimensional requirements that are set by the land use code typically. The lot is more than 10,000 square feet, but a large portion of the lot is encumbered by drainage, utility, and pedestrian easements around the east, south, and west sides. So the preliminary application was approved by HARC on November 16th with 6 conditions. Those were to reduce the glazing at the south facade. The amount of glazing on the south facade has been reduced by about 20%, which I think is visible in these side-by-side comparisons. The one on the right is the most recent one. Condition number 2 was to ensure that all doors are no more than 2/3 light. And those doors have been labeled 2/3 light. Condition number 3 was to ensure the solar panel racks and frames are non-reflective. And a note has been added to label the solar panels as non-reflective. As always, the town encourages the use of solar panels. Condition number 4 was to minimize the cut and fill that would alter the perceived natural topography of the site. So in the previous review, there were about 9-foot tall retaining walls specifically at the northeast corner of the house. That has been revised to terraces with walls that are now about 4 feet tall and veneered with stone. The guidelines recommend that the height of the retaining walls should not exceed 4 feet, which they have achieved with these revisions. Except I think for the visual impact of the cut into the hillside, which is not minimized with this terracing. The wall at the egress well, which you can see here at the east side, is still almost 10 feet tall, which reinforces the appearance of the cut into the hillside as well. The patio area at the southwest is mostly enclosed by retaining walls that I think could also be better integrated into the topography of the hillside per those developing hillside number 10 guidelines. Condition number 5 was to propose a landscape scheme that is rough, natural, and subdued in character. They have revised the landscaping to be, I guess, the trees to be placed more naturally. However, this condition relates to the previous one as far as the hardscaping, which alters the hillside into flat patios, which doesn't give the appearance of that rough, natural, or subdued landscaping that the guidelines encourage. And condition number 6 was to ensure the structure is under the 31 feet height requirement, and the height is compliant with the maximum parallel slope. So the new conditions that are in the memo are carried over from those that I've just discussed regarding the retaining walls and the landscaping. And then just a couple of these that require some additional information on the plant materials and the lighting. So staff is recommending that the application be approved with the conditions listed in the motion. I know the applicants are anxious to speak to you about those couple of conditions regarding the wells and the landscape. And they're here, Danny Houlihan and Benson Worthington are here as the applicants. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Donna? Okay, so welcome and
Hello, everyone.
share your screen and
So we can go in, I think the same order will be easy. So I know you guys didn't talk about this, but the image here, the coloration is a little challenged. On a computer, it's much more accurate. I know you're not asking about that, but the coloration of the roof and the siding and the stone and everything is really washed out there. So if you guys have a question about that, we could even pass this around, or if you have any specific questions there, just kind of notice that. So I believe the first thing to touch on is the retaining walls. That seems to be one of the biggest things, and the stone veneer. So the material board here kind of shows pretty close to some of the materials that we're thinking about using, and so you can see the flagstone. And the flagstone at this point right now is the same kind of veneer stone that we're thinking about on the walls. And John had brought up have a chat about that, and then also we threw in here this morning a possible dry stack option if that's where you guys want to go. The owner would rather have the flagstone on the walls that you see in the rendering. So we can, if you could pop back to that rendering as well and show the angle that's back in that area there. So that area there seems to be the area that we did terrace down per the code, and we're comfortable with, and so maybe some response there as well. And I don't know, can you zoom in at all? Yeah. You kind of see how the rendering is. Again, it's a little washed out, but it's kind of monochromatic, which is kind of what we're thinking when you're down in town walking around here. These colors are gonna blend into the hillside, which is, I guess, one of the points. The issue with the window well, the end of the day, let us know where you're at with that. We think it's reasonable. If it had to be, if it had to disappear, it would be like a window well that you see all over town where you just crawl out of it with a ladder. The owners really love the person in that bedroom be able to walk out instead of up a window well. So then what it would be is that all the grassy area would go right into there. There would be no more terracing. Does that make sense? So, bless you. So that talks about that area, window well. As far as the planting material, there's this word used, ornamental landscape, and we got rid of about 2/3 of the plantings from the last meeting. And if you go to this rendering here, everything except for the trees on the left and on the right, parallel to the house, everything else is a photo of the site. And we think that the plantings are exactly consistent with the whole hillside. Now, we do know that the lots left and right, there's no foliage on there. You have to get to Grant McCargo's, which is about 100 feet away. I don't think he owns a house anymore, but to the east where you have that huge aspen grove. So we're thinking they're pretty reasonable. And then go to the streetscape, please. Where the owners really wanted to kind of buffer people walking up and down the path because they're really worried about building a house in this area because they want to be part of the community. They don't want to upset so many people. So if you guys think that some of these spruce are ornamental, then we can happily remove them. Go to the next one. So coming down, this kind of blends in. Plus, everything between Tomboy Road and the home is going to be the 10-foot geohazard fence, and they'd like to mask that as well. So that was pretty high on their list. So a consideration, some feedback from you guys if you're kind of okay with the plantings, and we of course will do what's asked for to be able to get a full landscape plan and maybe more bushes and things that are a little more natural. So there's that. As far as, I don't know if you, as far as the glass goes, was one comment that John had made that I want to correct. Go to the south elevation, please. Is that we go to the original one, please. We got rid of 20% of the glass, but one comment was made on the top bay there, which is actually the mudroom in there. She made mention that we added a window and in fact, we removed one. So I think that was probably just a simple oversight there.
Yeah, this.
Yeah. So.
So there were 8 before? Dan, there were 8 up there.
Across there, there was.
Another 7.
one-
Well,
There was one less. I think it's
there's a 2.
My cursor's on the one that was removed. And then I'll go to
2.
the current.
There were 7 and now there's 6.
Okay.
And we can show a side by side, but I know you trust us, so. So that was one of the big comments, again, that I think that the group had talked about. So I think we've touched on these 4 major events here. And, we'll go with any feedback and any other questions that you guys have for us about what our thoughts are. I think we're good.
Okay. Questions for the applicant? I'll ask one while everybody's thinking, on that south elevation, which first of all, thanks for attempting to comply with reducing the windows 20% plus. Was that always, were those always double high stacked transoms above the second floor across there? Or a second
So
floor
second level,
above the big picture
These
window?
transoms above each door.
have
I have,
best one?
sure, yeah.
This
So
is from the first.
remember
Remember
that,
that.
and this is the first HARC presentation. When we had the cluster.
Oh,
So
okay.
Yeah.
you can see what we got rid of.
Yeah.
We got rid of, you guys had asked for 9 to 12, and so we got rid of 9, and a lot of them were substantial sizes. The only small one was, well, the small one on the top bay there, yeah.
Okay, that answered my question.
Sure.
Other questions? Or any dialogue we want to engage in with questions before we lose the applicant in deliberations? Okay. Hearing none, thank you, and we'll hear from the public. So raise your hand electronically if you would like to comment here. And we have one phone caller and one electronic. Does the public wish to comment on this project? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close that out and move to deliberations. If you would, we'll just go around the room, and he did bring up the window well and the ornamental, which is number 5. With any spruce, but I can see that landscaping was reduced. But any questions, excuse me, does everybody agree on 1 through 6 of John's conditions? And
1 through 4.
I'm sorry, 1 through 4. And I was looking at the old ones, I'm so focused. And are there any others to consider?
What do you want to start with?
Go ahead.
Sure. I'll start by saying that I'm pleased with the reduction of glazing. And I'm pleased by the simplification of the landscaping. The landscaping is a bit of it's a challenge, right? Because on the one hand, this is a south facing semi-arid site. To stay in harmony with the adjacent land, it should be semi-arid. You know, it's done. I think that pulling some of the aspens down from the grove that is higher up the hill into the east makes sense to me. I'd have to go out there and take a survey of what landscaping is adjacent, let's say, but I'm not sure any blue spruce
Scrub oak, right?
is nearby. I mean, further up the hill, there's some really big
Yeah.
And they do grow quite well.
Engelmann and whatever they are. Again, I'd want to take a survey. I think the concern about the landscaping is, and Johnny used the words more rough and natural. I think I really keyed in on the word natural. Natural is what's up the hillside. There's not a lot there until you get, up to, I think, onto the other side of the jug we'd be going up. But I don't want them to have to live in a desert either. So
There are 2 spruce left or 3.
yeah.
I mean,
And I'm sympathetic to the them wanting to buffer for all the pedestrian traffic that's going up and down Tomway Road too. So I'll just reiterate what I said the last time. I just don't want this to appear to be a green postage stamp surrounded by natural. There's got to be a way to soften and integrate it. And I think they've made steps in that direction. So the one thing that I do want to, that I'm still quite concerned with is the height and appearance of the retaining walls. To me, the attempt is to carve away at the hillside to provide flat outdoor areas. And what you see in the developing hillside is those flat outdoor areas are achieved by cantilevering decks and parts of the structure that don't carve away at the hillside. I think that happening in one location is probably acceptable, but by my count, it happens 4 or 5, depending on if you want to count that window well. There's the lower one on the west, there's 2 up higher on the east, and then that window well, I still feel like there's too much carving going on. And I'm not talking about the hole that's going to be dug to build the house. I'm talking about what the final result is. These terraces have been carved away at the hillside when in fact in addition to the big deck, that would be quite enjoyable, right? That remains my concern. But other than that,
Did the elimination of the window well help? Sure.
I'm not as, I mean, certainly I would like to see more earth.
Can you put up that elevation from the east so we can see it again, kind of? Better view maybe.
I mean, the fact of the matter is you're really not going to see that from anywhere. So
Yeah.
it's not like a giant red flag and a siren for me. But it's just one of 4 places where large flat exterior areas have been carved out of the hillside. That's my concern.
Who else would like to comment on 1 through 4?
I can. I totally agree with Stacy. I think it should be more a natural looking on the either side of the building, not these rectangular stepped terraces, more integrated into the hillside. Possibly using a different facing material like rough rocks rather than the flagstone. There's a photograph on page 170 that kind of shows a dry stack, rough and tumble kind of looking wall. And I think if that went up, absolutely needed it to access out of the building or whatever, that could be more integrated. And then anything above that would be more working with the contours, smaller steps, whatever. I think that would help a lot. On the trees, I think, yes, the blue spruce, you don't see them there. Also, dogwoods require, I think they're still on there, require a fair amount of irrigation. I think we would best to move more toward drought tolerant trees. I think it should look at the spacing of the trees in terms of the size, what they're going to be. One of the standards that's used is look at them, what typically are there at 20 years. And so you're going to have some of these trees are going to be, running into each other in 15 or 20 years. So increasing the spacing, which would reduce the number, I think would make this blend in more with the hillside. This is being married to a landscape architect. I don't know all these terms.
I was thinking to myself that when I was on P and Z, I would have had Angela there to advise me. I just want to go back to the condition real quick. The sections of the guidelines that John has referenced are all DH10A, and then she references the subsections. But to me, the most important part of that guideline is A, minimize cut and fill that would alter this perceived natural topography of the site.
Right, the intro. Yeah.
Everybody straw poll unanimous about this, cut and fill that John's condition needs to stay, and some of the suggestions we've thrown out, hopefully they come back. Good. What about flagstone? Do we care? I mean, I don't know.
I would say, the rendering shows some boulders, which do not show up on the drawings and the site plan. So I think sort of blending what they did before with this, I would be fine with some of these walls being flagstone that extend out from the building, but facing a stone that's definitely a veneer instead of a stacked boulder type of appearance doesn't help this integrate into the hillside. So I think a combination of bringing back more rough and natural
Flagstones.
Site walls, boulders. But I think in general, I agree with all of John's conditions. Per Stacy, I would add just the
DH10A intro.
10A, and then other than that, I'm fine with the condition.
And that natural, you would favor the flagstone.
No, I would favor more of a boulder stacked wall,
Okay,
Especially on the east side, this is so geometric now, at least from the rendering that's elevation.
I have another suggestion that we add DH10A4 and DH14 intro, DH14 3, or DH14B 3 and 5, which is shown there
on one,
on number 1.
okay. Okay. Any other concerns in the 4 or any other additional ones? I have one that I'm just gonna circle back and take a straw poll on the south elevation. On the GH 25 that she cited before, 25A, and she feels with that 25% reduction is compliant. After I look at, Joe, can you put up sheet 8 on the south elevation? I'm still troubled by, I'm thinking back of previous projects where we have a single transom all along that hillside that we've allowed. And this condition speaks to large expanses of what we're supposed to, but windows should be of traditional size and pedestrian scale, and that double stack transom troubles me with regard to traditional above picture windows, so to speak. Sorry for that word, but with that expanse. And so I had made a note that I thought a single high transom above those windows would be more compliant size, and with respect to dark sky, obviously emit a lot less light. Am I the only one that has that concern?
I'm satisfied with the reduction from the previous.
I am too.
Me too.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just on number 2, add, it says DH number 13A1, I would add DH 13A4.
Thanks, Bob.
And just another point quickly that it talks about in the policy 13 policy talks about native simple grasses, native grasses. They're specifically talking about native wildflowers. And I think native grasses should be in there, which will help control irrigation or erosion and provide some diversity within that mix.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion. Whoever would like to take it on. Anybody have that in more, do one? No, not yet.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I move to approve the proposed final large scale new construction at 448 Tomboy Road, Lot 2, Block C, North Telluride Edition, based on the findings in the staff memo dated February 15, 2023, and with the following conditions. Number 1, reduce the height and appearance of retaining walls by providing contouring and terracing consisting with, here we go, DH 10A intro, DH 10A1, DH 10A2, DH 10A4, DH 10A5, DH 14 intro, DH 14B3, B4, and B5. Did I get them all, Bob?
And DH 14B6.
And 6. 2, revise the landscaping plan to be more rough, natural, and subdued, consistent with DH 13A1 and DH 13A4. Items 3 and 4 as provided in the staff memo. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on February 15, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set, with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required.
okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, Karen? Keenan, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Yes.
Good luck.
Great, thanks, everybody.
Finish with board staff discussion, John. You wanna take that over?
Yeah, I had placed a mini training on the agenda, but I think it's more timely that we talk about the retreats coming up, and also I wanted to talk to you about the list of pending applications. This agenda is extraordinary. I mean, we don't often have meetings with just one application. But we really don't have a backlog anymore, so there's no concern of people waiting months and months. There's no concern of, one taking the place of another that might not be ready. That's gone away for now, so which we can all rejoice in. Next month, we have quite a full agenda. I think we'll probably have 5 items. This month, we had another item scheduled. They could not get it together. That's happening a lot right now for some reason. I think, we're working with sites that are very difficult, a variety of reasons, but the projects that we have waiting right now are just working it out. They're working it out so that they can get to HARC. Right now, we have maybe 4 new projects waiting to get to HARC. So there's no months and months and months of waiting. Having said all of that, right now, we don't have anything lined up for April. And our recommendation would be that we cancel the April meeting, because I know some of you are going to be traveling.
I will be here.
And that was a concern for one of the applications that was actually continued to May. So I don't know how many of you are traveling, but we would appreciate a break.
Do we, with the new pay raise, do we do with April?
Concerned about unemployment, maybe.
We'll buy you a beer.
So that's what the
What's the
next
date
few
of that one?
months,
It's,
April 21st.
Is there the concern that, are there any applications that would like to slide into an April spot? Or are we just not gonna have quorum, or what's the?
My fear is that we may not have a quorum.
Okay.
The 19th of April.
I'll be here.
I'm back on the 16th, but if it has to happen, I'm here. But I'm happy to take the month off.
We don't have any chair items lined up in April either.
We've worked through them all. Well, after Kieran finishes his hard work Friday.
So, yeah, I mean, many of the HARC board applications have now gone over to the chair review. So there are still a few of those, but again, we have a number of those that they're just in limbo right now. We're just waiting for revisions to come back. So there doesn't seem to be any terrible rush on anything that we have right now, except perhaps for one. But that's the picture right now.
I think it's to Matt's question. If somebody is looking at April, of course, the good news is it's not any longer 9 months to get in.
It
So
is
I
not
don't know that
No.
May is that troublesome if you,
April,
I mean, if we skipped April.
right?
I'm always sensitive to the public trying to get their project in, but then we don't know if anybody's gonna pick April.
I could think of one applicant that.
We have one applicant who's asked for April, but they were continued to May, and
Oh.
that's firm, I believe. So I don't think it's equitable to have a.
Well, straw poll, are we okay with staying from April and staff are breaking?
It's fine by me.
Other than those couple of months during the start of the pandemic, we have never canceled a HARC meeting ever
I
since
know.
I've been here, and Bob probably never
I
did
don't think we
either.
are.
So it's history.
Is there a possibility that someone can get in if they were at a smooth application and roll into April? Or is that no longer the timeline for noticing and all of those things?
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
I'm fine canceling. I'm also fine if somebody comes in or if you guys want to shuffle around.
Okay.
And are we still having the chair, the April chair?
No chair.
No projects. No continuations.
I don't think there were any options to continue into April, if I remember the packet correctly. So I think we're,
Oh, well, I think unless there's some emergency that comes up, we're all gonna walk away from here thinking there's no April meeting.
That's our intent.
If that's,
Yeah.
so,
I mean, you all have not had it very hard, so I don't.
Well,
think it's
that's
a
what I'm
huge
saying.
relief
If
to you,
something comes up
but it would be a
and we
relief
have a
to,
quorum,
yeah.
we can do it.
yeah.
pay
okay.
more, work less. Sounds like some.
Isn't that the way it goes?
Okay,
I know it feels a little weird to
I
everybody who's
know.
actually been through it,
Yeah.
but
I mean, they signed up for this huge backlog that we were supposed to,
it's vanished.
so anyway, okay.
Yeah, you saw the list and we've taken 4 off since you saw the list.
I
yesterday, so
Wonder why the backlog vanished.
we
Well,
moved
we
many.
sucked out
Because we started over here.
the economy,
Why? You
but-
guys were the problem.
but we sucked out 9 from the, took away from the board for the chair, right?
I know.
Oh, we're still recording.
But anyway, okay, so what else did you want
Okay.
to bring up?
So then, next on the list is our HARC retreat on February 27th. Another reason why we might like to give you a little break since we're having 2 additional meetings coming up. The retreat in February and another retreat in March. So we don't want to overwhelm you, but the retreat in February will just be HARC and staff and probably the mayor who likes to attend. We will serve you lunch. It's scheduled to start at 12:30, but you can come at 12 and have lunch. Tammy's scheduled a nice kind of variety of salad sandwiches, things from Lunch Money. And Ally is planning to do a legal training on conflicts of interest, which is different than the one she did last year, but I think is of interest to everybody on the board. Our code on conflicts is a bit nuanced, and so she and I thought that would be a good topic to go over. And then the board and staff can discuss whatever we think is pressing or needs to be discussed. A couple of you have sent me some suggestions, which are good, and I'm happy to put those on the list. We can talk about those now, or we can just put them on the list to talk about at the retreat. But if maybe we can talk about kind of clarifying that agenda a little bit and what you all want to get out of it.
In the last meeting, I threw out that, I don't know if it's the beginning, but it'll evolve into some discussion with, if we have everybody like we've got before, score our values 1 through 10 and see confidentially, just put them in a, mayor did the tabulation last time, and just see where we think we stand, where 10 is, maybe too extreme or stringent, and 1 is too liberal. I can tell you, I've been making a few notes. It's so easy to remember that there were at least 3 board members for the last year that would, with respect to the first value preservation, which whether it's setbacks, step downs, windows, not saying passport was right or wrong, would have been all over that. And now I kind of feel like sometimes I'm the only one that brings some of those things up. But I was thinking, rather than just babble on, would be, I could work with John and put 3 or 4 examples up, and we could just rediscuss them. Say, well, did we do the right thing? And with respect to the guidelines, which I think generally we are, but I thought at least it'd be some dialogue, and we could score how we're doing on our values. And maybe use some examples to talk about, but I welcome any other things. I will, how many listen to Saving Places or where?
I think you and I are the ones.
But it was interesting, that Crested Butte case. I don't know if I heard that one, which reminded me of 5 years ago when we said, well, should we do this and create a new category? Karen, you were here. And the 70s, 80s funk, because they scraped a house, which was beloved in Crested Butte, and put in this, I would say reasonably compliant through our eyes, structure with setbacks and massive scale and stuff. And I don't know if there's any interest or even curiosity, and it would create some more, but is there a 70s, 80s funk category that we'd like to even talk about? And actually, we could talk right now. If you don't want to talk about it, then we won't even put it on the agenda. Is it worth it? We won't debate it tonight, but is it worth any discussion? And only was reminded because of the Crested Butte case at the conference.
I mean, that something from that era would be listed as
Yeah, its own category.
historic.
Yeah.
Is this even possibly a kind of a non-starter? Are we gonna get support from the Secretary of the Interior?
So it would be a new period of significance, and there would be a process, public process. It wouldn't be easy. But is it something you want to talk about or consider? And I think it might be something that we talk to the council about at that retreat. I mean, we can talk about it at the HARC retreat, but that is a much larger conversation than just this board.
And I don't see things changing for us. At least in the next 5-6 months.
Well,
Dramatically, I mean, we would have time to discuss, debate, some things I'm just throwing it out there because. We almost took it on about 5 or 6 years ago, and then we got swallowed up with backlog, and we said, no, we can't put staff through this. Done.
I'm having nightmares of the Burley Block. That was beloved by a segment of our community. That thing was a fire trap and a hazard, right? I mean, my house is from 1975 or 78. There's nothing special about it, but it's funky.
Well, and that takes what is funky, and it's, the license plate houses. I mean, there are a few things that you can
Yeah.
probably picture in your mind, right?
Right,
Well, maybe that is.
maybe we should take pictures but I'm with Stacy, like, I live in a historical house that. And then I have additions from 70s and 80s that. They're horrible. They have to come down. I mean. They're not built as well as the houses from 1914. I don't know who was building in that era, so there's,
We would have to find good examples.
we have to find.
The ones that all pop in my head are bad.
Yes. But I'm up for the discussion.
yeah. it'd be worth having a
Things have
discussion.
progressed
One thing though is,
for the better.
at the national level, you have to be 50 years old. So that would be 1973. Anything newer than that, if you did it today. It would have to be.
Oh.
The
Oh.
town could establish
They could-
They're
local
all-
landmarks.
Yes.
True.
Yeah, if there are some extraordinary examples that you think really need to be preserved, I think the license plate shed was an example of one of those structures that was outside of the period of significance, but the town wanted to protect. So there could be individual listings, but if it's something we want to discuss further,
Yeah.
we can put that on the.
I think it'd be worthwhile having a discussion.
Yeah.
Could we take a couple pictures
Mhm.
walking around beforehand?
Yeah,
Probably through the lens of your eyes of what you think is funk.
mhm.
Well, and if anybody sees it, just send it.
Yeah,
your
just-
Or, yeah, if
just send me.
Take it on your
favorite
phone and
bunkhouse.
email it to John. Just-
we might not know the year it was built.
You can have a pretty good idea looking. at stuff.
When I first came here, I had a dog and they told me I could only work 40 hours a week, and as an architect, I was 50, 60, 70 sometimes. So I would walk the dog after work every night, and after a few weeks of that, I could tell you pretty much when that house was built, which era,
Yeah.
70s, because there was a very distinct style, siding, the windows and things like that. You could tell pretty easily. After a while.
Let's see, how many national historic landmarks are there in the US? 15,
A
20?
lot.
Well,
1900s.
Do we know of any of them that created the subcategory? Did Savannah ever have a subcategory? Probably not. Civil
They
War.
have, I don't know that they have another period of significance, but I think Crested Butte does.
Well, Aspen has. the,
Aspen does. They have
mid-century
mid-century modern.
Modern stuff.
Okay.
40s, 50s, and
Okay.
60s, yeah.
Wonder why Crested Butte didn't invoke that.
I don't know that they have that much.
Okay. Well, that was what the
It was
speaker
like-
was saying, that there was a lot of,
There's a lot of new stuff,
resistance,
new stuff.
but they scraped it.
There's always gonna be resistance. Change is hard.
Just, I don't know if you want to go into this, but I just got in Arizona, we have a house we're renovating. The legislature has passed, the Commerce Committee has passed 5-2. I guess it's an ordinance or what do you call it? Thing that they would vote on. That virtually eliminates any like HARC, P&Z review for subdivisions, for individual houses. You can put things higher than what was allowed before with certain limits like 80 feet, 60 feet, that sort of thing. I could send it to you.
Does the design board take the place?
There's
of the
no
government?
design board
Oh,
Where is that, Bob?
in Arizona.
So the state
State
legislature,
legislature. These are the same people that banned individual cities from banning plastic packaging. One town tried to do it, they sued them and they lost because they had passed this legislation saying you can't have any law that's more strict than what the state law is. It's
So,
scary. It's very scary.
back to the seventies
Sorry.
kind of period of significant, no, it's interesting, actually. There's no historic category for funk. But there is a legitimate tie to the history of the ski area. And I
Yeah.
think, if there are structures in Telluride that directly relate or directly relate to the development of the ski area in the seventies, that those are the types of structures that we could consider.
so we'll protect all of Tomboy Lodge. I mean, it's pretty tight. to
but by the way, if you
So
haven't,
That's the way to think of it when you're looking at structures, not just because it's funky, but also because it was a ski bum house, or it was built by someone who was involved in the development of the ski area. Those types of things, so
Right.
keep that in mind.
My concern is that we're talking about nostalgia, not history.
Part of the categories for listing are association with historic events, with historic figures. It's not just architectural history, it's social history.
and if you haven't walked through the
Places and
museum,
events.
when you taking that down, April?
April 1st.
You gotta, I mean, if you haven't seen it, you gotta walk through. It's got the epoxy sisters in there. Told John the story. I met him in some dark house one night. That's for another time, but
You don't want
So
that
any other
recorded. Mike.
ideas? Park retreat, February.
I think that's a good one. I think
Yeah.
reviewing our goals.
what we think. Send any other topics to it.
Yeah.
We'll have an agenda. I hate to and then we'll have a miscellaneous meandering at the end if we just want to get together and sing Kumbaya.
Well, we don't want to waste our time because we don't have that much time just to talk casually together. I mean, it's always in this setting, so it's a really good opportunity to work out any issues. Are there any design guidelines that you think are causing you problems that we need to find consensus on, or interpretation on, or things like that? I
Or
guess.
Robert's rules. Remember, we had so many instances with previous boards where there was a motion made and somebody had one little item that they couldn't look past.
Mhm.
I haven't seen that on this board yet, but I mean, and we can, maybe we just did. The review is you don't just vote it down for one.
Right.
The preponderance of the
Process.
evidence in the process approvable, and so I think this board gets it. But boy, we had several of those, like every night, somebody.
Instead of just voting no, they had to
Yeah.
pick on that one issue.
Okay.
But- okay.
So, following that is our retreat with Planning and Zoning Commission and the Town Council. That's on March 23rd in the morning. And the goal of that retreat really is to discuss issues that relate to all three boards. We have a few ideas of issues that I think concern each board, but I'd like to hear if you have any specific issues that you would like to talk to Town Council with in the presence of Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. Send your ideas to John.
And then
Any
we
other
can think of
discussion?
right now.
Okay, we will formally adjourn by unanimous consent at 6:50. Wow.
New record.